Bullshit! The first person to pick in the 2011 draft will be, let's get it, this is going to be good. Okay. John Cena!
Welcome back to the J.O.B. POD. So this week we're starting a new segment called Fantasy Draft. So we each pick an era, and we draft our top 10, including the champion. So this week, Darius Spiegel's going to start us off. Darius, go ahead.
All right, so the time period that I chose is going to be in 2011. WWE was in a transition phase where they were essentially the only wrestling company that was out there. They had most of the well-known talent on planet Earth. Companies like New Japan were still on the rise. Impact was also still in there, but they were also kind of in the midst of their own transition period. So what I wanted to do with mine was I wanted to take SmackDown in 2011, take the roster at the time in WWE, and if I was the booker of SmackDown, who would be the top 10 superstars that I would draft who was on the roster in 2011? With three goals in mind. So number one, you want to make SmackDown what it was in like 2004. You want to make it the wrestling show. Okay. Number two, you want to build up younger talent. Number three, you want to focus on beginning the overall improvement of women's wrestling in WWE. Okay. So, top 10 picks in order for SmackDown. Number one, CM Punk. Kind of in my mind, the way that the draft would work would be like maybe a month after WrestleMania 27. And CM Punk is coming off of his feud with Randy Orton. They had one of the better matches of WrestleMania 27. He's just coming off his work with the Nexus, which I thought was really good. But obviously, this is not pipe bomb CM Punk. What we want to do is we want to build the show around CM Punk in order to kind of coax him into staying with the company. And we're going to give him the title. We're going to make CM Punk who he should have been in WWE the entire time that he was there without getting him to that point of he was done, he was ready to leave. So we would try to present this to him as an idea in order to get him to stay with the company. Number two, you want to have a veteran established wrestler on this roster to kind of help prop up the younger talent. My pick with this is going to be a little bit controversial. I would pick Triple H to be on SmackDown, with the goal in mind of being that even though he wouldn't be the head writer or producer, we are starting to build him into that role because I believe around this time, NXT was starting to its kind of transition phase from kind of this reality TV show that was kind of bogus into what we know NXT to be now. So Triple H would be the veteran on this roster. He would have matches for younger talent to kind of build them up and get them ready for their main event spots. But also behind the scenes, he would take a little more, it would almost be like an apprenticeship as far as like producing a show, timing a show out, writing a show, things like that. Number three, it would be Daniel Bryan. This is before he wins Money in the Bank. So he would be the top babyface on the show, with CM Punk being the heel champion. And we would build toward a match for CM Punk and Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 28. Another condition that I had with this was that at WrestleMania 28, we would still have Rock versus Cena, and we would still have Triple H versus Undertaker. So Triple H would spend the majority of the year on the SmackDown roster helping building younger talent, then leading up into this Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 28. I believe both those matches should still be on the card because that's really what was most known about those pay-per-views, and I think we should keep that in continuity. Number four, my draft pick would be Natalya. So Natalya would be the veteran women's wrestler on the roster. I believe she's always been very underrated as far as her ring work goes. I believe that we could build the entire women's division around her at this time, which was honestly lacking for a lot of talent. We hadn't gotten into the 4 horsewomen phase of WWE yet, with them starting NXT and building them into WWE. So I think there are 3 women wrestlers on the current WWE roster in 2011 that we would kind of help build this division around. Natalya would be the first one. My number 5 pick will be Cody Rhodes. I believe Cody was criminally underrated when he was in WWE. At this time in continuity, if we were drafting, he would be just coming out of his match with Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania 27, which I thought was really underrated. Probably the 3rd best match on that show, next to Orton and Punk and Triple H and Undertaker. So we would kind of build him and our next guy, which would be Kofi Kingston. We would build them up as the young, kind of up-and-coming tag team that would wrestle a veteran team, which we'll talk about here in a little bit later on. And then after they have their tag team run, then spin them off into a main event run. So next we would have Beth Phoenix. She would come in to feud with Natalya. I believe that her in-ring work was also really good. She was one of the more dominant women wrestlers in the company at this point. We kind of build toward a feud with her and Natalya, and then we build our next entry, which would be Gail Kim. She would come in to feud with Natalya and Beth Phoenix, and all this would kind of lead up to a triple threat match for the Smackdown Women's Championship at WrestleMania 28. And then the last 2 picks would be Mark Henry and MVP. Mark Henry, we haven't gotten to Hall of Pain Mark Henry yet, but this would be kind of the precursor to that. I would build Mark kind of, really similar to what he was billed as with his feud with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 22, as just this very stout, hard-hitting, he is going to hurt you. He does not care. He wants to dominate. He wants to win. He wants to win championships. You build that Mark Henry up, and you form a tag team with him and MVP. So you would have the Bruiser. MVP would be the super athletic, very charismatic guy that can carry the team on promos. He can also carry the more athletic portions of the matches, because I also believe that his in-ring work was also very underrated. And you make them the tag team on SmackDown. They win the belts early on after they get drafted, and they dominate leading into WrestleMania, which would lead to the WrestleMania match between them for the titles against Kofi and Cody. So the big WrestleMania 28 matches that you would have on SmackDown that you would build toward, CM Punk would be your world champion going into WrestleMania 28. It'll be him and Bryan for the title in what would have been an absolute classic. Would have been maybe one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time if it had happened. Then you have the triple threat match for the SmackDown Women's Championship between Natalya, Beth Phoenix, and Gail Kim. And then the SmackDown World Tag Team Championship match between Cody Rhodes and Kofi Kingston versus Mark Henry and MVP. Triple H would still go up against Undertaker in the Hell in a Cell match. And I think between those 4 matches alone for SmackDown, you would reestablish SmackDown as the wrestling show in WWE.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome, man.
I really like that. All right, Blake, what do you got for us?
Nothing like what he just presented. Basically, I was just gonna do, when we rebranded ECW, coming back off of One Night Stand 06, I believe. Yep. So we all know how disastrous that went, which was sad for me because I had high hopes in the beginning. My love and all hope went out the window when I saw Sandman beat up a zombie. So first and foremost, I think as a champion, you have to come out of remembering what happens at One Night Stand 06. You have to come out of that with RVD as your champion. That is your number one choice. Rob Van Dam, probably to me, yes, Sean was a great athlete. All these other great athletes. As far as physicality, no one beats Rob Van Dam. RVD, you take, to me, you could put RVD, Jeff Hardy, Jeff Hardy, uh, Shawn Michaels, you can Stone Cold, Rock in any of the grades, and RVD, his hands down, going to outwork you. And I think with Rob Van Dam leading that pack, he is going to form, first of all, an instant credible champion. That it's going to give somebody the ability to chase down. During this time, as far as a veteran presence, I mean, they all at this point have that veteran presence, because I do feel like you bring a lot of the ECW roster back. But my second pick, someone who I have always thought is highly underestimated, the Blueprint, Matt Morgan. Because yes, you have Rob Van Dam and his high flying and all those, but then you bring in that powerhouse Matt Morgan to feud with him. I can't tell you a great Matt Morgan promo, but I can remember his physicality that he brought as the Blueprint in TNA, and hands down, it was that monster heel that you want. I mean, Rob Van Dam had just got some of the great promos, talking about John Cena's spinner belt. I always love that. But in this same spot, yes, you bring back a lot of the originals. I think, yes, Sandman has to be there. And you do not send Sandman to Raw. You do not ever pull that stunt. That's the downfall of him there. But I think you have to have Raven in this. You also have to have, I don't know where his health was at this point, but to me, you have to have Taz, because Taz, I feel like, bridges that gap between WWE and ECW. He was a guy in both companies. So, have him, come up to give that brawler feel to the RVD Matt Morgan angle. You do, first and foremost to this, you have to take out, you can no longer have this PG audience. You can't do that and have ECW survive. It didn't work. It was never going to work. And all they did was spit in the face of fans like myself. But I think that's what would have worked so well is, ECW with, a PG-13 rating. And then, you can have your kid-friendly shows on Monday and Thursday or Tuesday or Friday or wherever the hell they were doing it at that point. But, for Wednesday nights on Sci-Fi Network, PG-13. To finish out this segment, I also think you bring in Jeff Hardy. I should have never mentioned Mike Adams because I'm going to intentionally screw this up now. But you bring in Jeff Hardy because, again, Jeff Hardy and Rob Van Dam. The only thing to me that was good about the Invasion angle was that hardcore match that they had. I love that match. On top of that, you also have, of course, Tommy Dreamer has to be there. There's so many good people that I want in there. Of course, the Dudleys. But I also think you have to bring in fresh talent as well. If I could pull, and then to me, you have Paul Heyman leading this the entire time, and we've seen what he could do with Smackdown. If you have Paul Heyman truly at the forefront of this movement, with very capable young guys, your Jeff Hardys at the time, Matt Morgan, if I can convince him to come back, and Paul Heyman has said it several times, Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
I mean, Brock Lesnar would have ran through the roster kind of like he is now, but I think that gives him a platform to come back into, because, let him run through the entire ECW roster and then say, okay, who's next? Or, rip off Goldberg and be like, You know, we're gonna bump him up to Raw, have him run through Raw. You know, have him start small, make it look like you're earning his, you know, his path back to the WWE title. So I don't think I've got completely 10 wrestlers just because there's so many of the originals that I want to bring back. But yeah, as far as new guys and bridging gaps, Rob Van Dam, Matt Morgan, those are two that I'm definitely going with. If I can get Crimson, yeah, TNA's Crimson, definitely bringing him in. Anyways, I'll wrap mine up. You go ahead, Tony.
All right, Blake. Well, I like that. Honestly, you're kind of an asshole because that was the one I was going to do. But I'll switch gears here, and I'm going to do this on the fly. All right, boys. So I'm not going to do an entire booking segment with my choice for tonight because I think it's one that I'm sure we're going to use in one of our other segments. But I will give you my top 10 picks. All right, my era, single event, whatever. I don't know what to call it, but basically the time period is the WCW invasion. So I'm going to go with everything happened the way it happened. WCW, the whole, Vince bought the company, and then it was, months before we actually seen anything WCW. But the guys that I think would have made the actual impact are these 10. So my number one pick is going to be Eric Bischoff. So we all saw what Eric Bischoff did when he finally got to WWE, but imagine the impact that he would have had if he had come in right away. So Eric Bischoff is your number one pick. He's going to be your leader of the pack. He's going to be the first face that you see in the company. And you're not going to see him as the GM that comes out or this or that. He's going to be the guy he's in the crowd one night, right? Kind of redoing the whole NWO angle. So he's not leading the NWO, but he's leading WCW. So he's in the crowd, he's buying tickets, he's watching the show, blah, blah, blah. We see Eric Bischoff. My number two pick is going to be NWO. It is going to flash back to 1996 when we saw the first jump. It's going to be Scott Hall. Obviously, at this point in time, Scott Hall had some demons, but we're going to say that Scott Hall was healthy enough to make this angle work because it was creative enough, and if they'd done it at the right time, I think he would have really bit into it, and he would have latched onto it, and it would become something bigger than what his final run in WWE became. So that's going to be my number two. Number three, Kevin Nash. So now we've got NWO back, we've got the Outsiders back, we've got the Clique back. Right, so if you're going to have a big impact with Scott Hall and Eric Bischoff, who's your third man this time? It's going to be Kevin Nash. I don't bring Hogan in because we saw what happened when Hogan came back in as NWO. It did not work in a WWE audience. So Hogan is not going to be a part of my invasion. At this point, we've done seen Hogan, do the finger poke of doom. We've done seen him lay down for Jarrett, or Jarrett laid down for him. Hogan's got to have a breather. Hogan's got to come back as a red, white, and blue, or red and yellow, whatever. So my number four pick is going to be Booker T. So Booker T obviously had a major run in WWE. Booker T was the WCW champion at the time. He's the guy that made a big splash as a WCW guy. So if you're doing an invasion angle, I think you have to have Eric Bischoff leading the pack. You got to have Scott Hall and Kevin Nash as your enforcers, your NWO, your gangster type guys. And then you have to have Booker T as the credible worker, the guy that can talk, the guy, basically WCW version of Shawn Michaels, if you ask my opinion. Mm-hmm. All right. So number 5, Ric Flair, who is more synonymous, maybe another pick that I have on my list, but who's more synonymous with WCW, NWA, all the things that we know as anti-WWE, but Ric Flair. So you bring Ric Flair in, he's your veteran. He's your leader of the pack. He's the one that's, I don't know if I would straight put him into working angles. I think that with the caliber of Ric Flair, if you're talking about money, you've got to build him. You've got to have him there. You're going to sense some tension between him and Bischoff because that was real life, right? Him and Bischoff had stuff going back and forth. They weren't always the biggest fans of each other, whatever. But you have to have Ric Flair in your WCW invasion. Yeah. The fact that he wasn't a part of it is a joke. All right. Number 6, Sting. So another guy synonymous with WCW. He's never been in WWE. Now, obviously, like I said, I'm not going to straight jump into how I'd book this, but Sting being the number 6 guy, I would not put Sting on TV for 3 to 4 months. So we're gonna start this invasion angle. I'm just picking the top 10. There's gonna be some filler guys, kind of doing the run-ins like they did with maybe not a Mike Awesome, but those kind of run-ins, right? So they're running in, they're showing that WCW's invading. They're getting rid of that stupid shitty logo that they had at the end, and they're doing an actual WCW logo, and it's WCW invading WWE.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so my number 7 pick is going to be the Big Show, but he's going to drop the Big Show gimmick, and he's going to go back to being the Giant. All right, so the reason being is he was WCW created. What does Vince hate? WCW creations. If you really think about it, Big Show and Booker T are probably the only 2 WCW mainstay guys that Vince ever let get over. But if you have the Giant on your side, then you've got your whole WWF roster who've already kind of interacted with the Giant, but now they've got a Giant that's anti-WWF. It's straight up WCW. All right. Number 8, I'm bringing in Lex Luger. Just because I think with Sting, you have to have that backup guy that he can come in and do the save. Sting can come in and do the saves for, right? So maybe Luger, you bring him in, and he's kind of the guy that's out there. He gets along with the WWF guy, and then 3 more WWF guys surround him. They start doing the beatdown, and that's when you bring Sting in, right? So that's when Sting comes in. He starts doing, the baseball bat, and he's, fighting guys off of his buddy Luger.
Yeah.
Number 10, number 9, Scott Steiner. Why Scott Steiner? Because this is the era where Scott Steiner actually started to get over with his whole Big Papa Pump thing. You need a heel that can talk. He didn't talk very well, but he did talk. His matches kind of sucked, but you got a big name there, Scott Steiner. All right. My number 10 and my final pick for the WCW invasion, DDP. Is it going to be easy for people to hate DDP? No. So DDP is going to be the guy leading the positivity charge, right? DDP is going to be the guy that's in there, kind of like the Shawn Michaels Hulk Hogan thing. He just wants to know that WCW has a chance to fight against WWF. He's not there because he wants to attack guys behind closed doors. He's not there because he wants to disrupt things, blah, blah, blah. He wants a chance to prove that WCW stands a chance against WWF. So you've got all these other guys. I think Sting and DDP are leading your charge to make WCW a viable option of being the Smackdown brand of that period, right? So, so that's it, boys. So basically, WCW invasion with actual people that mattered. Goldberg is a person I did not name, but I think Goldberg, his legacy is so big and his whole aura is so big that you have to save him for once this angle is actually taken off, and then you bring Goldberg in as your big next step. So, all right, guys. Well, I think we all go ahead.
I was going to say, I think in that point, I mean, the Big Show is actually a great pick that you put in there. I mean, on the WWF side, you've got Undertaker, you've got Kane, and at this point, Big Show, I mean, for as much as Paul Wright could ever go, he could still go. Right. So I think you have him to use in that, with, Kane and Undertaker to provide that giant big fight feel. And I think, where you don't introduce Sting for a while, I think you don't, pull Undertaker and Kane into this for a while, because I think they kind of do the outlaw thing. Like, we're not a part of this. You guys do what you do. But then eventually they're getting tired of seeing the shenanigans. They're tired of seeing, everybody, beating up on the superstars, and, eventually, I think that's when you bring them in, and I think that would be a great angle. I don't know how you feel about it, Tony. And then to also capitalize on this, do not put ECW in any of this.
No.
ECW I think was already dead.
So basically, in our timeline of events that we've created in this alternate version of history, what you pitch with ECW at the One Night Stand, that's the first time we bring ECW back. We don't do the whole WCW alliance thing like that. That's dead in the water. We don't ever do that. But taking off your point, obviously, to me, the biggest matchup out of all this is going to be Sting versus Undertaker, right? But we've got to get Undertaker back to Undertaker, not American Badass. Would that be an interesting matchup? Probably, but I think if you're doing Sting versus Undertaker that we've all clamored for years, you've got to do Deadman Undertaker. So so maybe Sting's in there. Sting's doing his Crow gimmick. Undertaker's doing his American Badass. He's not getting over on the WCW guys. He's got to break out the Dead Man, dude, and that's how you lead up to your WrestleMania. Is you got to bring out the Dead Man to put WCW in the ground, and Undertaker versus Sting, Dead Man versus Crow. All right. So that's all I got for this segment, guys.
Fucking ugly bitch! Fucking bullshit!